So what we're doing here is we're critiquing a lot of the assumptions within democracy and within this question. Um, and I'm going through each term because I think that's a real strategy which you should try and deploy in your essays more generally. One of the ways which we can make sure we've dealt with all the nuances, all the hidden ambiguities and complexities of a question is to go through each word systematically, break down each word systematically. Every single word in the question, really, besides the sort of, does, a, and. But everything else we can really look at and scrutinize. Another one, automatically. So now into this green section. Automatically confer. So confer is the formal term to give, as I mentioned. And it's denoting this should happen by default. There's no questions. There's no intermediary debate. As soon as one wins an election that's free and fair, that alone is sufficient to provide someone with the authority to govern. But isn't this... So if we have a system where political parties are free to invent themselves, to join politics, anyone can start a political party under this democratic system. But how do we make sure that a party that, or rather, actually, so if anyone has the potential to start a party, we can get some very extremist parties. A party could be campaigning at something absolutely abhorrent. However, they could manipulate themselves up through power, up through politics, and get in. You might think that's ridiculous and would never happen, but that's exactly what happened in the case of Nazi Germany. One of the worst dictators and the most inhumane political leaders of all time, Hitler, was able to exploit a democratic system whereby a victory automatically conferred a mandate for government. Why? Because there were no checks and balances. There was no system which made sure that parties, there was some form of intervention between winning an election and being conferred a mandate. What would this look like? Something like a set of laws or rules or an institution, or perhaps a commission or authority that's appointed by government that, regardless of whichever government comes into power, a bit like the judiciary system, it's apolitical. It's something that's in charge of monitoring and keeping a check in the balance against extremist parties getting into power. But the Nazis were also able, in the 20s and 30s in Germany, to get into power through exploiting a corrupt system. Lots of treaties, lots of payments, lots of manipulation was involved from Nazi politicians. Hitler himself with the weak institutions of the Weimar Republic, Weimar Germany. Now, in a later session, we're going to unpack this a little bit further when we're dealing with some examples in one of our historical sessions, forming part of the 4 sessions on relevant theories and arguments. So if you're interested, then please do follow up with that session. But I'm mentioning this now to demonstrate that an example of whereby the weaknesses of a free and fair election, so a weak democratic institutions, the ability to manipulate and corrupt you and sort of corrupt the system, to pay each other off, a lack of institutions to prevent against these things from happening, combined with a lack of a intermediary between an electoral result and a mandate for government power, the lack of both of these things resulting in a totalitarian, authoritarian, abhorrent leader coming to power in order to demonstrate that actually maybe there is an issue with this. Maybe there is an issue with this question of automatically conferring. Now, so that's unpacking some of the real ambiguities of the question, but let's touch for a second on roots of inquiry. Remembering that a good essay will explore various ways of interpreting the question. If you think about what are the obvious ways of approaching the question and only touch on these, then you're really not going to be cutting into the high levels. What are the ways that you interpret this question, which you don't think other people might have thought of, which you think are a bit more unusual? These are the ones you want to focus on. The obvious ways of approaching, so you want to tick those boxes off. They are important, but they shouldn't predominate.